Most men crave noise, validation, applause, the comfort of being seen. But the chosen man is born for something far quieter and far more dangerous: solitude. His path is not crowded because it was never meant to be. He doesn't walk alone out of pride. He walks alone out of necessity. The higher the mountain, the fewer the footprints. The chosen man's silence isn't emptiness, it's discipline. It's the arena where his mind sharpens and his purpose grows teeth. While others are busy chasing belonging, he is building himself into something the world can't ignore. And the irony? The same people who mocked his isolation will one day beg for his guidance. Solitude is not loneliness, it's selection. The universe strips a chosen man of distractions so he can face his raw potential without escape routes. Most can't survive that kind of confrontation, but he can, because the chosen man was never made to fit in. He was made to stand out. This is why a chosen man always walks alone, not as a victim of separation, but as a master of destiny. 1. Isolation isn't a curse, it's a calling. Most people fear being alone because they mistake isolation for rejection. They think silence means something's wrong. But for the chosen man, isolation is not punishment. It's preparation. The universe removes him from the noise not to hurt him, but to rebuild him. You don't ascend in crowds. You rise in silence. Every great transformation begins in separation. Look at history. Prophets, warriors, thinkers, kings all had a period where they vanished from the world. They walked through deserts, caves, or inner darkness. Why? Because revelation requires distance. You can't hear your true calling while surrounded by distraction, ego, and the opinions of the mediocre. Isolation strips away illusion. When there's no one left to impress, you're forced to confront what's real: your weakness, your doubt, your hunger. It's brutal at first, like detoxing from a drug, but that's the exact pain that builds clarity. In solitude, your senses sharpen, your instincts awaken. You start to see what others can't because you're no longer trapped by their noise. The chosen man learns to embrace his aloneness. He stops chasing company and starts listening to the silence. He understands that being separated is not a sign of failure, but a divine signal, a transition from who he was to who he must become. The solitude that once scared him becomes sacred ground. Most men run from this phase. They try to drown it out with distractions, endless scrolling, shallow conversations, constant busyness. But the chosen man endures it. He sits in the stillness and lets it break him open. He learns to be his own source of validation, power, and peace. That's what makes him unstoppable. When you realize isolation is a calling, everything changes. You no longer beg to be understood. You stop lowering your energy to fit into circles that don't match your frequency. You stop explaining yourself to people who will never see your vision. Instead, you go silent. You work. You evolve. You become the kind of man who walks into a room and commands attention without saying a word, because silence has become your language. The world calls it loneliness. You call it alignment. The weak see exile. You see evolution. The chosen man knows solitude is where the shift happens, where the noise of the world fades and the voice of destiny finally speaks. So if you find yourself alone, don't curse it. Don't fight it. Understand it. You're being called higher. The path of greatness was never meant to be crowded. You were set apart for a reason, not because you're unworthy, but because you're being refined. Isolation isn't a curse. It's an invitation from the universe, from destiny, from your higher self, to become the man no one else dares to be. 2. The crowd feeds on comfort. The chosen feed on purpose. Most men crave acceptance. They build their lives around the approval of others, chasing validation, applause, and comfort. But comfort is the currency of the average. The chosen man was never built to belong. He was built to become. And becoming requires sacrifice of comfort, of company, of normality. The crowd lives for pleasure. Their lives revolve around avoiding pain, seeking ease, and finding safety in numbers. They measure success by how entertained or comfortable they are. But comfort is a silent killer. It lulls the mind into mediocrity, convincing you that stillness is peace when it's really paralysis. The chosen man knows this. He looks at the crowd, laughing, distracted, endlessly consuming, and feels nothing but clarity. He sees what they can't. That comfort breeds weakness. When everything is easy, nothing grows. That's why his hunger feels different. He's not chasing comfort, he's chasing calling. He would rather walk alone in purpose than sit surrounded in stagnation. Purpose is dangerous because it demands everything. It tears you away from the familiar and drags you into the unknown. It's why chosen men often seem distant, because their minds are in battle with something higher. While others live to be liked, the chosen live to fulfill their mission. And purpose, unlike comfort, doesn't stroke your ego. It humbles you, tests you, and breaks you before it builds you. The crowd fears the discomfort that comes with growth. They'll tell you to take it easy, enjoy life, don't overthink it. But those are the voices of the spiritually dead, men who traded potential for peace of mind. The chosen man understands that ease is temporary, but purpose is eternal. He's willing to suffer today for a greatness that will echo long after he's gone. Comfort makes you predictable. Purpose makes you powerful. When you live for comfort, you become a follower of trends, moods, and social approval. But when you live for purpose, you transcend all of it. You operate on principles, not emotions. You do what must be done, not what feels good. The crowd feeds on distraction. The chosen feed on discipline. While they chase dopamine, you chase direction. While they party, you plan. While they rest, you rise. And though the path feels lonely, it's the only road that leads to immortality, not in fame, but in legacy. The chosen man accepts that his destiny won't be understood by everyone. He stops trying to convince people of his vision and starts embodying it. He realizes that belonging is the enemy of becoming. You cannot evolve while trying to fit in with people who fear change. So he walks alone, not because he hates the crowd, but because he refuses to shrink for it. The crowd wants comfort today. The chosen want power tomorrow. One ends their life wondering what if. The other dies knowing, I did. The world will call you cold, arrogant, or obsessive. Let them. That's the price of purpose. You were not born to be liked, you were born to lead. And leadership, real leadership, demands that you detach from the comfort the crowd worships. So starve your comfort, feed your mission. Every day you trade ease for effort. Every moment you choose discipline over distraction. You move closer to the man you were destined to be. The crowd will never understand why you walk away from their noise, but that's fine. You're not here to be understood. You're here to build something eternal. Comfort feeds the herd. Purpose feeds the chosen. And in the end, only one leaves a mark that time cannot erase. 3. Rejection is proof of alignment. Rejection feels like death when you still crave belonging. But once you understand who you are becoming, rejection becomes sacred. It's not punishment, it's protection. Every time someone leaves, every time an opportunity closes, every time you're pushed away, it's the universe saying, you no longer vibrate there. Most people fear rejection because they mistake it for failure. They see it as proof that they're not enough, not wanted, not worthy. But the chosen man learns that rejection is proof of elevation. When you start to grow, your energy shifts. You no longer match the frequency of those who remain stuck, and that mismatch creates friction. They don't reject you because you're wrong. They reject you because you're evolving. The world resists change. It fears what it can't control. So when you begin to move differently, when you stop gossiping, stop chasing, stop conforming, the world labels you distant, arrogant, or cold. But what they're really saying is, you no longer serve their comfort. And that's the moment you know you're walking the right path. Rejection is alignment in disguise. It removes what cannot go where you're going. The friends who disappear, the relationships that collapse, the opportunities that slip away, none of them were meant to survive your transformation. The chosen man doesn't chase what leaves. He studies the lesson it carried and keeps walking. Because the loss isn't loss, it's refinement. When you ask for strength, life gives you resistance. When you ask for clarity, it gives you confusion to cut through. And when you ask for purpose, it strips away everything that isn't aligned with it. That's why the chosen often walk alone, not because they're unworthy, but because they're being prepared. Think back to every rejection that once broke you. Now look at who you are because of it. You didn't die, you evolved. That job you didn't get, it forced you to build something of your own. That person who walked away, they created space for someone more aligned. Every no was simply the universe redirecting your energy toward what was truly yours. Rejection only hurts when your ego fights alignment. The ego wants to belong. The spirit wants to become. The chosen man eventually learns to stop chasing doors that close. He knocks once, twice maybe, but if it doesn't open, he understands. He doesn't beg to be seen. He builds until they have no choice but to notice. Every time the world rejects you, it's testing your loyalty, not to them, but to your mission. Will you crumble because you're not accepted, or will you stand firm because you know where you're going? Most men choose acceptance. The chosen choose alignment. Here's the truth. Rejection isn't a setback. It's a sorting mechanism. It filters out everything that would have slowed you down. You were never supposed to be everywhere with everyone doing everything. You were supposed to be exactly where your higher self demanded, disciplined, focused, and alone if necessary. Stop mourning the rooms that didn't want you. They couldn't hold your energy. Stop trying to convince people to understand you. They weren't meant to see the vision. Stop apologizing for your standards, your silence, your solitude. You didn't lose them, they lost access to you. Rejection means realignment. It's the invisible hand of destiny, pulling you out of the wrong frequency. And when that happens, thank it, because every rejection brings you closer to the tribe, the mission, and the life that actually fits your evolution. The chosen man doesn't take rejection personally. He takes it strategically. He asks, "What is this trying to teach me?" Then he uses that insight as fuel. He knows that being unwanted by the wrong world is the first step to being recognized by the right one. Let them reject you. Let them misunderstand you. Let them walk away. Every exit is a blessing in disguise, a divine confirmation that your frequency has risen beyond their reach. You're not being pushed out. You're being placed higher. That's what rejection really is. Not exile, but elevation. 4. Brotherhood is earned in battle, not in talk. A chosen man doesn't crave company. He commands respect. He doesn't gather crowds. He attracts warriors. Brotherhood isn't built through shared words, but through shared wars. In a world where loyalty is cheap and talk is abundant, true comradeship is forged only in the fire of experience. You'll notice something as you rise. Everyone wants to walk with you, but few are willing to bleed with you. They'll cheer your ambition until it threatens their comfort. They'll admire your strength until it exposes their weakness. The moment your path demands sacrifice, the crowd vanishes, and that's when you discover who was real. Most men mistake friendship for brotherhood. Friendship is easy. It survives on laughter, convenience, and mutual validation. Brotherhood, however, demands pain. It requires testing, trial, and time. It is built when two men stand back to back against a world that wants them broken. It's not found in group chats or social circles. It's found in struggle. A chosen man understands this deeply. He doesn't hand out trust like it's charity. He studies men, how they react under pressure, how they handle envy, how they speak when he's not in the room. Because he knows words mean nothing until they're tested in the storm. Talk is the cheapest currency on earth. Only battle exposes truth. The lonely seasons of your life are not punishments. They are filters. Every time you level up, you'll find fewer people who can walk beside you. Not because you're arrogant, but because your standards rise with your discipline. You stop entertaining weak men, gossiping minds, and lazy spirits. You stop explaining your vision to those who only want to debate it. You become selective, not out of pride, but out of protection. Brotherhood must be earned, not invited. The chosen man attracts warriors through his actions, not his words. He becomes the embodiment of strength, and in doing so, he magnetizes others who have walked through their own fires. You can't fake that energy. You can't pretend you fought when you've never been tested. Warriors recognize warriors by the scars, by the silence, by the way they carry themselves when the world is falling apart. You'll meet people who will call you brother, but only time reveals if they mean it. Some will vanish when your life turns dark. Some will envy your rise. Some will betray you just to feel powerful. It will hurt, but remember this truth: the lonely path refines your tribe. Every betrayal is a filter. Every loss is a lesson. Every test is a divine selection process, separating the real from the replaceable. Brotherhood isn't emotional, it's spiritual. It's two or more men aligned by purpose, not convenience. It's not about constant contact, it's about constant loyalty. A real brother can disappear for a year, fight his own demons, and when you reunite, nothing has changed. No gossip, no resentment, just mutual respect and recognition. That's the mark of a true warrior bond. But you'll never find that until you walk alone first. The weak cling to groups to hide from their emptiness. The chosen walk solo until their purpose naturally calls forth equals. Loneliness is the crucible where you discover who you are without applause, and only from that self-awareness can true brotherhood emerge. When you stop chasing company, you start attracting quality. Your energy sharpens, your standards harden, and that quiet strength begins to repel parasites and draw lions. You won't need to beg anyone to stay. The ones meant for your journey will recognize the same fire within you that burns within them. The world is full of talkers, men who call themselves brothers, yet disappear at the first sign of chaos. Let them. Their words are dust. Real brotherhood is silent, disciplined, and forged in mutual struggle. It's not about handshakes, it's about shared scars. So walk alone until the right men appear. Let your solitude refine your strength. Let your discipline speak louder than any introduction. Because when you meet another man who has survived his own isolation, you won't need to explain yourself. One glance will say it all. You've been through the same fire. Brotherhood is not something you search for. It's something you earn through war, through loss, through victory, and through silence. You don't find warriors by talking about the battle. You find them in the battlefield itself. The chosen man doesn't need many allies, just a few who would go to war beside him without question. That's the rarest bond on earth, and until you've earned it, walk alone, proudly, silently, and prepared. Because the man who survives solitude becomes the kind of leader others would die to follow. 5. Comfort in solitude is the mark of power. Most men fear silence because it forces them to face the truth that they are nothing without noise. They drown in their own thoughts, suffocated by the absence of distraction. But the chosen man, he thrives in it. He understands that solitude is not emptiness. It's power in its purest form. In a world addicted to noise, constant scrolling, endless talking, mindless validation, the man who can sit alone undisturbed becomes dangerous. While others run from their minds, he studies his. While others chase company to feel alive, he builds worlds inside his solitude. The crowd fears quiet because quiet reveals weakness. But the chosen man uses quiet to sharpen his edge. Solitude is where you stop pretending. It's where masks fall off, illusions crumble, and you confront your raw self. That confrontation is painful, which is why the weak never stay there long. They fill the silence with stimulation because silence exposes them. The chosen man, however, learns to stay. He faces his thoughts, his fears, his failures, and he rebuilds himself from within. The modern world equates aloneness with failure. You're told that being alone means you're unloved, unchosen, or unworthy. But the truth is inverted. Being alone is the first sign you've separated from mediocrity. When your frequency rises, noise disappears. When your purpose deepens, distractions vanish. Solitude isn't loneliness, it's alignment. The most dangerous men in history didn't emerge from crowds. They emerged from silence. The warrior in exile, the philosopher in retreat, the strategist in his study. Every revolution, every empire, every great transformation began in isolation. Because in solitude, the chosen man stops reacting to the world and starts reprogramming it. He doesn't crave validation anymore. He learns self-approval. He doesn't chase comfort. He builds endurance. He doesn't beg for understanding. He creates results that command it. That's what solitude gives you. Total control over your focus, your emotions, your evolution. When you can sit alone and feel no anxiety, you've reached a level most men never touch. You've disconnected from dependence. You've detached from the need for external stimulation. That's when your mind becomes a weapon. While others lose themselves in attention, you forge yourself in isolation. There's a reason powerful men withdraw before they rise. Silence becomes their laboratory. They visualize, they plan, they rehearse their future in the mind before it ever manifests in the world. Solitude becomes their training ground, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. The weak confuse this with loneliness, but loneliness is a void. Solitude is a forge. Loneliness says, I need someone to fill me. Solitude says, I will fill myself. One leads to dependency. The other leads to dominion. When you master solitude, you stop being manipulated by scarcity. You no longer chase connection, you choose it. You no longer fear rejection. You understand it's simply redirection. You no longer depend on company to validate your existence. Your presence validates itself. Powerful men don't avoid the world. They just refuse to let it consume them. They withdraw not because they hate people, but because they know energy is currency. Every interaction costs something. Every distraction delays something. Every unnecessary conversation dilutes focus. The chosen man spends his solitude wisely, plotting, reading, building, meditating, evolving. If you feel restless when you're alone, that's not loneliness, that's withdrawal. You've been addicted to distraction for too long. The silence feels unbearable because it's detoxing you from dependency. But if you stay in it long enough, something happens. Peace begins to replace panic. You start to enjoy your own company. You start to think clearly, move deliberately, and act with precision. The man who becomes comfortable in solitude becomes untouchable. His emotions are not swayed by absence. His confidence is not dependent on attention. His mind becomes a fortress. While the masses need the crowd to feel powerful, he needs nothing, and that's why he's feared. Every empire begins within. Every great transformation is born in silence. The chosen man doesn't rush out of solitude. He mines it for gold. He leaves his isolation with vision, discipline, and strategy, while everyone else wastes their time seeking noise that numbs them. So if you find yourself alone, good. Stay there. Don't escape the silence. Study it. Listen to it. Use it. The comfort you build in solitude will make you unshakable in chaos. Because a man who is at peace when alone becomes unstoppable when surrounded. Remember, solitude doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. It strips away illusion and exposes truth. And once you find power in silence, you'll never beg for noise again. That's when you've crossed from ordinary to chosen. That's when you've become the kind of man the world cannot control. 6. The chosen man isn't misunderstood. He's beyond understanding. Most people aren't capable of understanding a chosen man because he doesn't move by the rules of their world. He doesn't seek comfort, applause, or belonging. His compass is internal. His path is divine. And when the average man sees that level of independence, it frightens him. They call him cold because he doesn't react. They call him arrogant because he doesn't explain. They call him distant because he doesn't need constant company. but none of that is true. He's not emotionless. He's evolved beyond emotional dependence. He's not proud, he's aware. He's not detached, he's simply focused on something higher. You cannot be understood by those still addicted to the noise you've outgrown. When people see you operating from vision instead of validation, it threatens their sense of order. Your silence makes them question their noise. Your discipline makes them feel exposed. Your independence makes them feel trapped. That's why they attack what they can't comprehend. The chosen man's life looks like rebellion to the ordinary because he refuses to follow their scripts. They live for permission. He lives for purpose. They perform to be seen. He moves to be effective. They crave attention. He seeks alignment. His values are alien to them because his energy comes from a source they've never tapped into: solitude, suffering, and inner mastery. To the crowd, his calm feels unnatural. They mistake his composure for arrogance. But he's not trying to prove anything. He already knows who he is. When you faced your demons, buried your weaknesses, and rebuilt your mind from ruin, the noise of judgment becomes background static. They mock what they can't mirror. They hate what they secretly envy. The chosen man represents the version of themselves they're too scared to become. Decisive, untamed, unbothered. Every insult thrown at him is really a confession. I don't have your strength. That's why a chosen man must grow comfortable being misunderstood. Because if the masses do understand you, it means you've deluded yourself enough to fit into their frame. True power alienates before it inspires. Vision isolates before it attracts. Greatness always begins as heresy. The prophets were mocked before they were followed. The warriors were doubted before they were crowned. Every man who ever changed the world first had to walk through a desert of misunderstanding, where his motives were questioned, his sanity ridiculed, and his silence misinterpreted. But those years in isolation forged clarity. That's where the chosen man earns his vision. The truth is, most people don't want to understand you. They want to categorize you. They need to fit you into a box that makes them comfortable. The moment you don't fit, they label you arrogant, cold, weird, different. But that's not an insult. That's evidence of your evolution. Let them call you distant. You're not meant to be reachable by everyone. Access is earned, not given. Let them call you emotionless. You've simply trained yourself to act with logic when others crumble in emotion. Let them call you proud. You've built confidence from discipline, not from applause. A chosen man doesn't waste time explaining his frequency to those still tuned to static. He understands that trying to be understood by the ordinary is a form of self-betrayal. His validation comes from his mission, not from misunderstanding minds. There's a strange peace in being beyond understanding. You stop trying to be liked. You stop trying to fit in. You stop explaining your silence, your distance, your focus. And once you stop explaining, you start expanding. When they say you've changed, good. You were never meant to stay digestible. When they say you become cold, smile. Fire must burn before it gives light. When they say you're alone, remember, the higher you climb, the fewer can breathe your air. To be chosen is to be misread by the masses and understood only by destiny. You will lose people who can't follow your pace. You will be judged by those who never had your vision. You will be doubted by those too afraid to believe. But that's the price of separation, and separation is sacred. The chosen man doesn't seek to be understood. He seeks to understand himself. That's the difference between the wanderer and the leader. One chases validation, the other follows vision. When they finally see the results, when the empire rises, when the prophecy fulfills, when the silence turns into legacy, they'll say, "I always knew he'd make it," but they didn't. They just couldn't comprehend you until the world finally caught up. So remain still, remain silent, remain misunderstood, because the chosen are never meant to be explained, only revealed. 7. Solitude breaks the weak, but refines the strong. Most men fear being alone because solitude forces them to confront what they've been avoiding, themselves. The noise of the world distracts them from their emptiness. The moment that noise fades, they crumble. They call it loneliness, but it's really withdrawal. Withdrawal from validation, comfort, and distraction. That's why solitude breaks the weak. It strips away the illusions they used to hide behind. But for the chosen man, solitude isn't punishment, it's purification. It's the fire that burns away dependency. It's the silence where strategy is born. He doesn't escape the noise because he hates the world. He escapes it because the world is too loud to hear his own mind. While others drown in silence, he learns to breathe in it. While they seek company to fill their void, he uses solitude to fill his soul. Weak men use people to avoid thinking. Strong men use solitude to sharpen thought. When a chosen man walks alone, he's not empty, he's charging. He's refining his focus, filtering his emotions, and observing life without distortion. Silence becomes his teacher. Stillness becomes his forge. Every great empire, every legendary idea, every transformation began in solitude. Away from noise, away from comfort, away from validation. The world teaches you that constant company equals happiness. But constant company is addiction. It feeds your ego while starving your evolution. Growth happens when the noise stops. That's why prisons break weak men, but produce prophets. Because when you're left alone with your mind, there are only two outcomes: madness or mastery. The chosen man chooses mastery. In solitude, you hear things you couldn't before. Not voices from outside, but whispers from within. You start recognizing patterns in your thoughts, motives behind your actions, and lies you once told yourself to survive. This awareness is painful, which is why the weak run from it. They can't face their own reflection without distraction. But the chosen endure the fire of self-awareness until the impurities are gone. It's easy to be confident when you're surrounded by applause. It's easy to be brave when others cheer you on. But the real test is when no one is watching, when the phone doesn't ring, when there's no audience to perform for. That's when the weak panic and the strong ascend. Solitude teaches you to generate energy without external fuel. You no longer need motivation from others because your mission sustains you. You stop chasing validation because silence validates you. You stop depending on approval because your own reflection becomes your witness. That's how power is built, not through constant noise, but through prolonged isolation. The chosen man understands that solitude isn't loneliness, it's leverage. It's how he observes the battlefield while everyone else rushes into it. It's how he plans 10 steps ahead while others waste energy reacting. He doesn't fear being alone because he knows solitude is temporary, but what it produces lasts forever. The weak seek company to feel safe. The strong seek solitude to become dangerous. The weak crave distraction to escape their thoughts. The strong confront those thoughts until they turn into clarity. The weak chase noise to silence their doubts. The strong use silence to sharpen their certainty. A man who can sit alone without needing escape has conquered the hardest enemy, himself. Because when you no longer need company, you can't be controlled through isolation. When you no longer fear silence, no one can manipulate you with attention. That's why solitude refines the chosen. It makes him sovereign. The throne isn't built in public, it's built in silence. The chosen man's power is invisible because it was forged in moments no one saw. The nights of reflection, the hours of doubt, the days of discipline. He doesn't announce his evolution, he embodies it. By the time the world notices it's too late, he's already become untouchable. Most people pray for companionship. The chosen pray for clarity. And clarity is only found in quiet. That's why he disappears, not because he's broken, but because he's rebuilding. He's pruning his circle, recalibrating his purpose, and realigning his energy. Solitude isn't where he loses himself, it's where he meets his next version. So if you're alone right now, good. Stay there until the silence stops feeling heavy. Stay there until your own thoughts stop attacking you. Stay there until you find peace without needing presence. That's when you'll understand the secret. Solitude doesn't destroy you. It reveals what's indestructible. Because the same silence that drives others insane becomes the chosen man's throne. Where they lose themselves, he finds his crown. Where they collapse, he creates. And when he finally steps out of solitude, the world doesn't recognize him, because he's no longer one of them. He's reborn, refined by silence, armed with focus, and guided by something no crowd could ever give him: clarity. 8. Walking alone isn't the end, it's the beginning of dominion. Walking alone isn't the downfall the world makes it out to be. It's the initiation. It's the silent phase before you rise, the cleansing before your coronation. Every man who ever ruled himself first had to stand alone, not because he wanted to, but because destiny demanded it. The path of solitude isn't punishment. It's preparation for dominion. When you walk alone, you shed every illusion the crowd fed you, their fears, their timelines, their voices echoing what's possible and what's not. You start to realize that loneliness isn't the absence of people, it's the presence of truth. And that truth is simple. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to rise above. Society glorifies connection but demonizes separation. They tell you to network, collaborate, blend in. But a chosen man understands that blending in is how greatness dies quietly. When you walk alone, you offend mediocrity. You expose the comfort they worship. You remind them that the path of mastery requires exile. Walking alone forces you to rely on your own judgment. No mentors, no noise, no validation. You become your own counsel, your own general, your own goddamn soldier. That's why most men will never make it here. They collapse the moment applause fades. They depend on company to feel worthy. You, on the other hand, learn to generate worth internally. That's what makes you dangerous, because a man who doesn't need anyone can't be manipulated by anyone. Solitude grants you sovereignty. Dominion begins when dependency ends. The weak think control means ruling over others. The strong know control starts with ruling over self. When you no longer seek approval, no one can bribe you with it. When you no longer fear rejection, no one can silence you with it. When you no longer crave company, no one can distract you with it. That's dominion, the highest form of power. And walking alone, your priorities evolve. You stop chasing pleasure. You start building permanence. You stop reacting to emotions. You start commanding them. You stop waiting for opportunity. You start creating it. This is the unseen transformation, the metamorphosis that happens when the world forgets you. They call it isolation, but it's incubation. They call it distance, but it's design. Every empire began with one man walking, alone. Caesar, Alexander, Marcus, Machiavelli. They all faced a phase where no one believed, where loyalty turned into silence and love turned into distance. But in that silence, they forged their iron will. Dominion doesn't begin when others follow you. It begins when you no longer need followers to move. Understand this. Most men are scared of solitude because it exposes how little power they truly have. They fear the mirror that shows them their lack of discipline, purpose, or self-respect. The chosen man uses that mirror as a weapon. He studies his flaws until they turn into strategies. He faces his fears until they become instincts. Walking alone isn't about proving strength, it's about becoming strength. The crowd lives on validation, the chosen lives on vision. The crowd lives for comfort, the chosen lives for conquest. The crowd dies seeking attention, the chosen dies building legacy. When you walk alone long enough, you cross a line from seeking approval to commanding respect. You no longer chase recognition. You embody inevitability. And when the world finally sees you again, they call it overnight success. They don't realize the nights you walk through, the ones where your only company was your thoughts, your fears, and your fire. Dominion isn't given to the loud. It's earned by the silent. The man who masters solitude becomes untouchable because his power no longer depends on the external world. That's why walking alone isn't the end. It's the beginning. It's the moment you stop begging for belonging and start building your kingdom. You stop asking for permission and start giving direction. You stop needing love and start radiating presence. Because when you master being alone, you stop living in reaction to others and begin living in command of yourself. Walking alone teaches you to move like a king without a crown, calm, deliberate, unshaken. It teaches you patience, precision, and perspective. You learn when to attack and when to wait. You learn that noise is the weapon of the weak, and silence is the strategy of the strong. And one day, after the silence, after the exile, after the rebuilding, you rise. Not as who you were, but as who you were meant to become. The crowd that once ignored you now studies your every move. The same people who said you changed are the ones who stayed the same. You look back and realize solitude didn't break you. It crowned you. Because when you master walking alone, no one can ever walk over you. You no longer move through the world as a man searching for belonging. You move as one who belongs nowhere, yet commands everywhere. That is dominion. That is the reward of the chosen. And that's why the lone path, though cold and empty, always leads to the throne. If you ever feel like you're walking alone, good. You're exactly where the chosen are made. Solitude isn't proof that you're lost. It's proof that you've left the ordinary behind. The noise fades before the rise. The loneliness comes before the legacy. Every empire starts with exile, and every chosen man is first misunderstood, then envied, then followed. The path is brutal. You'll lose people. You'll question yourself. But what's being built inside you is rarer than friendship. It's sovereignty. The man who learns to stand alone becomes a force no crowd can contain. That's your mission. To rise so high in silence that when you finally speak, the world listens. You are not forgotten. You are being forged. Keep walking. The throne is ahead. If you're done walking with the weak, join the clan of the chosen. Subscribe to Step Inside the Guru Clan and begin your rise.